Today's video is a tour of Hansell Vineyards in the Sonoma Valley and how they use animals to suppress weeds, to fertilize their vineyards, and to control fire. All organically and sustainably. A really great example of regenerative farming in action. This vineyard's been around here for how long?
1953. If it was a clear day, we'd be able to see San Francisco, I'd be able to see Mount Diablo. Yeah, so back in the day, in the 1950s, the original landowner here, Zellerbach, he wanted to replicate a grape growing region in France. And so because of the volcanic soil, because of the aspect of the way it's facing the sun, the hillside and all that, and the varietals, he planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And these are really old vines. In fact, they're the oldest, longest in production in the Western Hemisphere for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Pretty world class. The dogs are instrumental. If we didn't have the dogs, you'd literally have to barn every animal at night to keep the big cats away.
Right.
The dogs that we have, which you'll meet in just a little bit, are Marimba sheepdogs. They're from Italy. They call them wolf slayers.
Really?
It's awesome. They got out once chasing a mountain lion. We know that because all the neighbors had been seeing sightings, tracks. So yeah, without the dogs, we couldn't do it. So this is we're done with grazing for the season, but this was our base camp, where we'd have electric fencing, water, other shade structures, which you'll see, which I built down there, and they would have rows to pick from to go and graze. So all of these vineyard rows are grazed. They're not mowed. They're grazed by animals. And while the animals are grazing, of course, they're giving the ground what it needs, and that is natural fertilizer.
So what animals are grazing?
So we have sheep, and we have pigs, ducks, chickens, geese.
And do all of those different animals go in the vineyards?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Just at different times, or?
No, all together.
All at once?
Yeah. Although they have different niches that they pick.
Right.
Chickens are really interested in the manure, flicking it apart and eating the larvae that hatch off of it. Team up often with a pig. Every pig usually has 3 or 4 chickens sort of complementing them, and when the pig flops over soil, the chickens go in and start scratching, and so the chickens want the bugs and the grubs and the seeds and the like. And it's fun too because the only animal on our team that will do this following job is the chickens, and that is they'll eat the larvae in the manure of the pig's waste before it hatches, and then they flick apart the manure and they essentially spread it. So they are a manure spreader, mulching professionals, and the cleanup crew is what the chickens do. The geese are a new thing for us. We're finding that they're entirely, they love eating the cover crop as it leaves out and flowers out. They shred that stuff. So they're very similar to the sheep in that they want the stuff above ground. They want to eat the stuff that's broadleaf, flowers, and of course their manure is great for the ground. Sheep are just mobile lawnmowers. They eat everything above ground. When we send them out in the grazing area full of cover crop in the vineyard, they're all about charging out and eating the tops of all the 14 different things that we plant that composes the cover crop. They start at the top and they work their way down to the very nub of the cover crop that's growing. And of course their manure is great too. The chickshaws are based on another person's designs, so we were happily interested in buying the PDF from him.
Oh, nice.
And we just got the material locally, and then so this shows you it's well loved, Nice. Little ramp there.
Nice.
Lizard. We keep a big piece of plywood on the front here, something like that over there, that big opening to keep the dogs out, because the dogs love eggs too. So
Right.
You can grab all that.
So the crate. Tell me about the crate.
But,
I see. You just cut them where the handle goes. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't been in operation since we moved the grazing animals out of the vineyard, so they're not being used. So they're just flip floppy and
right. Right.
Scout, this is the sister, and that's Bradley, the brother.
Bradley.
And she's all about effective. He can go, you know, he can take it or leave it. You know, he'll receive pets, but he doesn't like live for it. She lives for it.
Behind you is the electric fence.
Yes.
Yes.
We use a solar-powered, temporary and easily movable fence. This stuff here. The horizontals are hot. The verticals are not. And then you pound them in with a rubber mallet. Pretty simple stuff. And it's common material used by folks that run sheep and cattle mainly. But we use them for our whole grazing team. And right now, I'm using them exclusively for the pigs. With pigs to take care of the fire fuel issues on the ground, and then when the pigs are done, I go in with my chainsaw and I take out all the dead stuff, and then I get a chipper and I chip all that material, and we work on paddock by paddock systematically across the property. So that's really the goal. And for now, I'm using pigs. At least our pigs, they don't require protection. So in a space like this, if you had goats, if you had sheep, if you had chickens in there, without wildlife or without guardian dogs, then they would get poached nightly. So this fencing is problematic with our dogs because it's so short. This fencing works really well for pigs because it doesn't need to be very much. They'll stay in, they honor it.
Hi. Hey there. Hi.
The grazing fence, the solar-powered temporary grazing fence that I use for the pigs is different than when I take the whole grazing team out into the vineyard. So we're talking sheep, ducks, chickens, geese, and of course the 2 livestock guardian dogs. Our fencing is a lot taller, so it keeps them inside. But for now, they're in their summer paddock, their vacation home, waiting for grazing season to start. And what that looks like is once we harvest all the wine grapes and then everything goes dormant, we seed all the rows with our cover crop mixture, which is about 14 different things, a lot of legumes and whatnot that really works towards creating better soil. And when that germinates because of the rain and the time of year, and we get nice height on it, that's when we start to bring the grazing team back out. So they hit the ground running as soon as we get a good foot or 2 of cover crop. And by the time we get 4 feet of cover crop and everything is going to flower and seed, that is like the best time ever because everybody's got so much to eat, and the cover crop is doing its thing across these 45 or so cultivated acres on this 200-acre property. This property has so much unmanaged forest that I found that removing Douglas fir, especially the young stuff, will serve the place really well. What I'm finding is the Douglas fir will outcompete the oaks and the bay and the madrone when it goes unchecked. So the Doug firs grow through everything and then shades everything out. Everything dies underneath it, and then you end up with a massive fire hazard. So one of the things I'm doing is, even though Douglas fir is native, it's so invasive. And so one of the things I'm trying to do is systematically remove the young stuff and allow the big stuff to be there up on the ridge tops. But also removing the ladder fuel of that big stuff, just so that when there's a ground fire, it doesn't get up into the canopy and just everything is over then. So as part of that removal, you know, I could either use a chipper, get rid of everything, mulch for our gardens around our pathways and whatnot, or I use it for building material. So lately I've been using a mixture of acacia tree and Douglas fir to make stuff in our farm program, like a sheep feed rack.
Mama! Let me tell you something, Mom.
We just use a little solar-powered device here to run our boundary of grazing fencing, and it's pretty simple. You know, the whole thing is very temporary. Roll it up, break it down, bring it to another area, set it up, and go. And so I check it every day just in case it's not running. If it isn't running, the pigs are likely to push the boundary or any other animal that's inside. and get out. And if I forget to refill water, of course they're going to push that boundary and go look for water. So we make it a point to check the fence and how effective it is. Of course, topping off the water twice a day so they don't get stressed and want to wander off. In fact, this style of fencing is intended for not only wet but very dry forest conditions. In fact, they recommended this style for what we're doing.
What if a branch touches it?
Branch is more like a limb and pushes it down, and the more concern is animals getting out or predators getting in.
So the branch won't ground it out?
No.
Okay, good.
Can short if things are touching it, and therefore what I find is a reduced conduction with more things touching it, so it doesn't work as well. It's not as effective. So what we're looking at here is about 2 weeks worth of pigs active in a forest area, and it kind of looks like a bomb went off, but that's okay because it is, after all, summertime. And so my goal is to treat this whole area, get the pigs disturbing the soil, get the pigs eating broadleaf, poison oak, knocking things around like stones and other woody debris. And I actually supplemental feed these pigs something called organic hog grower. It's a pretty common thing found at feed stores. Anyway, I take that grain, and I'll show you that in a little bit, those pellets, and I throw that stuff in the brushiest, driest, deadest stuff on the understory of the forest, and they go in after it. And so when they go in after it, they end up assisting me in breaking down all that debris, turning it into soil, essentially, as they go after the pellets. Among other things they eat. They eat bay nuts, and they eat acorns, and anything else they can find. As after all, they are omnivores. And I'll show you that. What I do daily is pick a new spot. Like, I'm going to go over there where it's really thick forest and dead debris, all that dry stuff. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to throw supplemental feed into that brush, and then they're going to go after it. And as they go after it, they start to break down all that wood. So I'll cruise over there. And if they get out of the boundary, they're trained to follow the sound of grain in a bucket. So it's pretty easy to corral these guys back. After all, they just follow their stomachs. So water is the other crucial element. So if they don't have enough water, they'll get stressed and they'll push the boundary and go look for it. So in an attempt to replicate a creek bed, I've put some stock tanks down there, and I fill them twice a day. And as you may know, acacia is non-native, and it's also super invasive. And so when I first came upon this stand, my observation was nothing really exists within the grove of acacia. So by default, it's displacing the native oaks, and it's not allowing biodiversity to occur in this forest. So as part of my forest restoration with work with the pigs and fire fuel reduction, I'm removing acacia from the site. And trees, it's interesting, man. The trees, they have an ability to, like eucalyptus, they'll outcompete everything else by changing the soil biology. And so I'm interested in bringing the pigs in here to do their thing, to disturb the soil and stomp. And hopefully by next year we won't get any new little sprouts of acacia. So as it is, we're pretty close to harvest right now, and it's summertime. So once that occurs, everything goes dormant, the leaves drop of these things, and everything kind of goes to sleep in a way. And that's the opportune for us to reseed a cover crop into these rows. And that is all dependent on rain, of course, too. So once it starts raining, the cover crop germinates, and when it gets to about 2 feet tall, we bring in our grazing team. And over the course of 4 months or so, we move the animals systematically to treat the land, and what that includes is their work to eat cover crop, their work to drop manure and urine, their work to lightly disturb the soil. That is our fertilizer for this property. You can kind of get a sense of looking at the area I moved them from to where they're working right now. You know, it's had a couple of days of rest after I pulled them off, and so it's bouncing back already with this good weather, which is sunny and rainy. So we'll get a good bounce back real quick.
How long have they been in here?
Since Tuesday, and today is Saturday.
And how long will you leave them in here?
I'll move them out tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, they'll go into the next pasture over. We want to stay away from overgrazing, creating erosion.
Right.
We want to give the remaining cover crop time to bounce back. Because if you let them go too much, they'll put a detriment on the plants, and they won't be able to bounce back like we want them to. Because in, I don't know, 4 months time or so, I'm going to be cutting and baling some of this stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how big is this spot here?
It's about the size of a soccer field, so an acre.
Right.
Yeah, an acre every 4 or 5 days is what this team of over 150 animals can manage.
And you said about 100 hens?
Yeah, exactly.
Like 15 geese?
There's about 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 geese. Because of that program of our heavy, intense cover cropping and no-till, we have reduced our irrigation needs by 60%. The grazing team is composed of about 150 animals. At the top of the food chain, of course, are the 2 livestock protection dogs, and without those 2, none of it would be possible because of all the predation that occurs, or that could occur without them being on site. When people ask about our animals and what we do with them, obviously the primary purpose is for them to live out their entire life doing their job of providing nutrients for the land. You know, what becomes of them when they get old is an honest discussion, and that is they become food, you know, but not until they're just so, you know, they can't do their job anymore. Not only were we interested in producing an organic product, but our facility is considered organic now too. So if we were to
winemaking facility.
Yes, so that's we stepped it up in that regard. Likewise, so if we bring fruit from off-site, it's got to be certified as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We prune them. We prune this part. So this little where this piece of tomato here grows in the armpit, as I call it, we prune that off as it grows up taller, and that seems to focus the fruit. Brandywine, as at least this section, but there, and then Pink Boar over there, San Marzano over on the other side. I mean, there's just so many varieties here. That's the point, is growing variety. Yeah. So because of the way that I'm learning with my coworkers on growing tomatoes in particular, on the single trellis, weight bearing on the top, and these are either recycled bale string from our organic alfalfa, which we use in our animal programs, or it's hemp. This actually is hemp. The blue stuff down there is repurposed bale string. So because of this, I'll never ever produce another tomato again in a cage. So what we're looking at here is several hundred tomato plants, and I can't imagine trying to manage, harvest, prune, cultivate tomatoes with that many cages side by side. It just wouldn't work. There's not enough space. The cool part about producing tomatoes on a single trellis like this is when they top out on the weight bearing, the load bearing portion, you could actually remove these clips and shift the entire plant down and keep going, so they have more space. Otherwise, you'd have to do some really tall trellis work, and all that means is then you're pruning off the bottom, taking those loose leaves and tomatoes off the bottom, giving it that space to then keep on producing in the upper part of the canopy. Total race though, because when they grow really tall and you take all the clips off and you shift it down and clip them on again, now you've got fruit touching the ground and they're not ripe yet. So that's the problem with it. So we got a late start this year. Otherwise, we probably would have already been ahead of the game.
And you can't pull that one up?
You can, but you know, it had already topped out. So maybe we dropped it down a little early. I don't know. We'll see. So one project I wrapped up yesterday was harvesting red winter rye. And we had rye planted on a lot of our beds. In fact, we planted rye and barley in the vineyard too, and we just let it, you know, mature and just be without even harvesting it, just so that it puts more organic matter into the soil. However, what I did with the rye was several fold. Number one, I harvested the grain off of it, and now it's in my office ready to be put through a stone mill, which I have. And the other part is there's a lot of straw material that comes off of rye, and so to make use of that, I mulched it, or I chipped it. So over here, I've got all these trash cans full of freshly mulched, or I ran it through a chipper, rye straw. And so I'm going to bring this up to the chicken coop, and I'm going to use this as their bedding. We'll see if it works.
And this is the chipper that you used?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Just a standard chipper for a homeowner?
Yeah, small program chipper style. Can't handle too much at once. And I even took the ends, the mature parts of the rye, and stuffed them in there, and then pulled back on the straw so it wouldn't get in the mix. But it actually knocks the berries, the grain, off of the chaff. And so at that point, I ran it in front of a box fan to do the winnowing and separated it all, and now it's just pure, beautiful, lovely
So
grain.
what was the first step on getting the berries off?
I also use the chipper. So
Okay.
it's got a light ability to knock and thresh around that it didn't destroy the grain.
So the grain went all the way down into the hopper and then out?
Yeah, into this bag. So there's a little bag here. It shoots it into the bag.
Oh.
And then from the bag, I open it up and I run it across the front of a box fan, and all the light stuff kind of blows off, and all the heavy grain drops into a bucket. It feels right. All the decisions we make on an agricultural level feels right because it's healthy for us and for what we put in our bodies. And this environment too. I mean, what a place to work and live on this 200-acre property where 45 plus acres are cultivated with wine grapes, and the rest is native forest.
Please leave comments below with any questions that this video sparked for you, and we will do the best we can to get those answers for you. I'm Mike Stokes, reminding you that the choices we make together make the world. Thanks for watching.